Good afternoon and welcome to the Institute for National Security Studies, the INSS in Tel Aviv. My name is Itai Brun and I'm the Deputy Director of INSS for Research and Analysis, and I'm proud and excited to open the second annual conference of the Lipikin-Shahak program that deals with national security and democracy in an era of post-truth and fake news. The title of this conference is National Security, Fake News and Strategic Communication, and this conference is an outcome of INSS collaboration with two of the leading and most distinguished institutions in the world. Today, the first day of the conference is in collaboration with King's College Center for Strategic Communications located in London. And the second day, next Thursday, November 19, will be done in collaboration with the American RAND Corporation. We have a fascinating program for you. Today we will have two panels. One will deal with Disinformation 2020, actors, threats, possible solutions. And the second will deal with memory construction and strategic communications. But there is no better way to open this conference than with an interview I conducted a few days ago with Michael Rich, the president and CEO of RAND Corporation. Michael is also leading a RAND program that is titled Truth Decay, dealing with the diminishing role of facts and analysis in American public life. We are proud to have him with us, and let's hear the interview that was recorded just before the network's announcement of Joe Biden's victory. So we are using different terms, but I think that practically, probably we are referring to the same issue. So how do you define the term truth decay, and what is its importance, in your view, in the American context and in the global context?
Well, let me start by saying that I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. We know we've had many interactions, associations here at RAND with INSS, and it's always delighted to participate in these kinds of discussions. You noted that we define truth decay as the diminishing role of facts and analysis in public life. It's made up of four trends. First, the increasing disagreement about objective facts and data. Second, blurring of the line between facts and opinion. The third is increasing relative volume, and therefore we believe the relative influence of opinions over facts. And finally, declining trust in key institutions, especially institutions that had previously been looked at as sources of facts and data. Our research shows that truth decay in the United States has grown more serious and more pervasive over the last 2 decades. Americans are confronted by a deluge of misinformation, disinformation that's enabled by technology, social media, and a traditional news industry that's driven by economic incentives to increasingly blur the line between fact and opinion. And the consequence is that many individuals no longer trust the government or other established institutions and don't know where to turn to for reliable information. And as a result, there's skepticism and disagreement about objective facts and analysis that underlie important policy discussions, whether it be about the safety of vaccines, about the effects and consequences of human-driven climate change, the safety of genetically modified foods, the benefits and costs of immigration, and the list goes on. This disagreement makes it impossible to make steady progress on our major policy challenges. Up until now, we've studied the trends, the causes, and the consequences in the United States, but we're also examining truth decay in a global context, and one of our future reports will study whether or not we see the same truth decay trends in Europe.
I can tell you that we definitely see the same trends, the same characteristics in Israel, and we will probably discuss it in the future. But I have a question. I understand the characteristics, but what is, in your opinion, the true impact? How can you measure the impact of these characteristics, these four characteristics, on the public ability to clarify reality, to understand reality? What is the real impact of truth decay?
Well, it starts with the erosion of civil discourse. And by that, I mean the ability to have meaningful discussion or debate about an important topic with someone with whom you disagree. When that civil discourse erodes in government settings, it leads to dysfunction. We've seen in the United States, and occasionally, and some people might say often, it leads to gridlock or paralysis. And this gridlock or paralysis makes solving the most complex problems, achieving the most important aims in the public sector virtually impossible. So if you imagine reforming a social program, planning and carrying out a major infrastructure program, sustaining a strategic competition with an adversary. In the past, those sustained challenges have been met through compromise and consensus, not a zigzag path of repeal and replace actions back and forth. And if our society and our elected representatives cannot agree on a common set of facts, we're not going to be able to make progress on key issues like healthcare and immigration and homelessness and many others that face us.
Thanks. You're emphasizing the impact, the implications of truth decay mainly on the public, on the general public, on the society. We at INSS are emphasizing the same characteristics. We are emphasizing their implications on the decision makers, on the people in the security, national security rooms. Our main argument is that these rooms are not immune. They also suffer from growing difficulty to clarify and understand reality. What is your opinion on this matter, on the impact on the decision makers, the president, our prime minister, the key principals?
Well, I think it affects decision makers the same way it does, it affects other members of society. The volume of disinformation, our own cognitive biases, the way humans are hardwired to access and seek out information and use it to make decisions, the way in which the media blurs the lines between fact and opinion, that can make it hard for individuals anywhere to A, find the factual information they need, even when they're looking for it, and B, process all the various pieces of information that one has to process in order to make a complex decision. And so I applaud your emphasis or your focus on the implications of truth decay for senior government officials and senior military leaders. You're
describing periods or waves of truth decay. And I want to ask you if we might be in some kind of a wave that we will sometime end. And I want to connect it with what we saw in recent months concerning the public and the media and the social networks reaction toward the COVID-19. And we saw, I think, from my perspective, we saw the desire of the public, an unusual desire of the public to understand what is really happening, to clarify the facts. We saw the media trying to mediate reality to the public, sometimes even, at least in Israel, giving up rating consideration. We saw the social media taking responsibility, directing the users to fact checkers, to official sites and so on. So is it possible that we are toward the end of this period, of this wave? Are we in the beginning of the end of the beginning, or we are just at the beginning of this period?
Well, it's a good question. I wish you could answer it. I think my answer is none of the above.
Okay.
We know we're not at the beginning. We've been watching this worsen in the United States, at least, for almost 2 decades. There are some indications that we might be at a turning point. One would think that the worldwide threat and consequences of the pandemic might serve that purpose. But I think there are some other indications that things seem to be worsening. In fact, there's little indication that we really made much sustainable headway yet in addressing the challenges related to truth decay. So I think it's safer to say we're solidly in the middle of this particular period of truth decay, and what we do or don't do in the near future could make a big difference in the direction that we end up moving as democratic societies.
And it's really dramatic days and dramatic hours in the United States. What do you think, how do you evaluate the impact of truth decay on the US election, on the current dramatic events concerning the US election?
Well, I think we saw substantial evidence of truth decay at work during the election. We saw, a huge volume of information, both facts and analysis and opinions. We saw, I think, a blurring of the line between facts and opinion. Often all news channels are filled up with people exchanging opinions, and so it's difficult in our various media to distinguish the two. By the way, facts and opinion, they're both information, they're both valuable, but they're not the same, and people need to have the ability to tell them apart. So we saw the blurring of the line, the explosion in the volume of opinion, and some uncertainty and distrust among American voters and more broadly citizens, some uncertainty about where to turn for reliable information. And one of the things I think that makes it so challenging here in the United States is our research shows that it's not a phenomenon that is confined to a particular geographic region of our country. It's not something that characterizes one particular demographic group, an age group, for example. It's not something that is limited to just one of our two major political parties. And so this is really a systemic problem that relates to the causes that we outlined in our research. Cognitive biases that are part of human nature, the vast changes in the information landscape that are continuing, the failure, frankly, of our education system to, in a way, keep pace with these changes, and then the extensive and growing polarization in our society, not just political polarization, but social polarization and economic polarization, all of which combine and reinforce each other to make it easier to both create for yourself and sustain these information bubbles that fail to expose us to conflicting information.
Thank you. And maybe finally, we are both think tanks. What do you think is the role of think tanks in the effort to cope truth decay?
Well, because of the existential danger posed by truth decay, I believe that nonpartisan, nonprofit think tanks like RAND are more important than ever. One of our former trustees, a former public official in the United States, Newton Minow, reminded me that RAND was created in 1948. Actually, the same day, it turns out, as the State of Israel, May 14th. The purpose then was to help address the existential threat of that time, the Soviet Union and its nuclear arsenal. And he went on to say that truth decay is the existential threat of our time. And I believe that. And that's why I've committed RAND to leading the fight against this threat, the fight to put facts and analysis back at the center of public discourse and public policy making. If not RAND, then who? We can't do it alone, and that's one of the reasons why I'm delighted that major institutions like INSS are joining in the fight with us.
Thank you so much, Michael, for this fascinating interview. We are sharing the same perspective, and we are trying to lead the same effort in Israel. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and let me say that I look forward to further discussions, debates, and collaborations.
Thank you very much.